Why has the liberal world been so weak as this force of fascism arose? I'd say we're talking about since the early 1990s. If something was visible happening, and the liberal world didn't see what it was. And I had personal experience. One form that took was that I heard what Rush Limbaugh was doing to the minds of the 20 million ditto heads. It was a force of fascism, and I sought to get radio people to have some counter programming that would uh, undo the fascistic push from Limbaugh, not with a politicized, but with a completely different spirit of in which truth and mutual respect are values and not trampled on for manipulative purposes. But a lot of liberal people that I talked with, one guy actually said, Rush Limbaugh's audience is not our concern. So they didn't see what was rising. And I think that continues for a whole long time, up through the Obama presidency, which is to say, up until the nature of this force became more nakedly ugly, evil, that liberal America and the Democratic Party didn't see what was arising and taking over conservative America. But there's a way in which it's not just not seeing. There's also a part of the weakness is that the liberal culture has come to be conflict averse. That the spirit of I'm going to fight and win this because it is, that spirit. We don't hear glory hallelujah and the soldiers marching in the liberal world over the last generation, and it was called for. So there's a fear of fighting, and I think that remains true. I think, for example, of Merrick Garland as emblematic of a wonderful but also weak spirit in the liberal world, in which I would have preferred for him to regard going after Trump and his co-conspirators as the opportunity of a lifetime to make an important contribution. I mean, it was desirable to prosecute, and there was no good reason to postpone it and just go after the people who broke into the Capitol and not launch an aggressive uh, uh, investigation of the people who obviously were behind the whole thing, out of a fear of the confrontation. That was a confrontation that should be welcomed. I'm rather pleased that once Merrick Garland handed the ball over to a terrier like Jack Smith, that finally the might of the justice system was going to be harnessed by our Attorney General through handing the ball off. But it is very telling that that the Attorney General sought to minimize the confrontation rather than to capitalize on the confrontation. I think liberal America has been like that since Limbaugh and Gingrich emerged. They're afraid of the confrontation it would entail to fight for the hearts and minds of the people that Limbaugh and Gingrich were driving in the direction of fascism. Maybe liberalism didn't see it because to see it would have meant to have had to go toe to toe and head to head against this thing that was rising on the right, and maybe liberal. I got really the feeling that liberals just didn't have the stomach for it. I think about how John Kerry got swift voted in the 2004 election. That's also emblematic of the weakness of the liberal world. Wonderful in so many ways, but not up to the fight. And that's a matter, to some extent, of intestinal, fortitude. It's not inherent in the liberal position to be that way. I mean, I don't think FDR had anything like that in him, and he was definitely liberal. Maybe this is something that happened in the Democratic Party when the Doves took over out of the debacle of Vietnam. But to shrink from a battle that needs to be fought is no honor. And liberal America has been shrinking from the battle that needs to be fought until finally roused. I mean, Merrick Garland getting Jack Smith is emblematic of the Democrats. I would have had the Democrats impeaching Trump in 2017. That was at least calling for the impeachment. I mean, there were signs that this was something that he was trampling on the constitutional order. I actually made a couple of press events around here by the office of my Republican former opponent in the 2012 election for Congress. I hadn't come close to beating him, but I spoke the truth about him, and then I was on his front step saying that he was by then the chairman of the Senate of the House Judiciary Committee. It was his job to be launching an investigation of things that were obviously likely impeachable. And anyway, that's what I saw. I saw there was a threat to our constitutional order, but it took the Democrats, from my point of view, was a very long time to come around to impeach. And then they impeach on a single charge, where what we really should have had, I think, is a whole tapestry of the way Trump had acted contrary to his oath of office. But anyway, once Trump eventually was defeated at the polls and then refused to abide by the results of our constitutional process, Democrats were slow, and the Attorney General was slow. These are the most serious crimes ever committed in the United States history, in the two plus histories. Trump's crimes dwarf any other crimes I can think of. But Garland didn't want to go after them. There is something maybe general going on that I don't fully understand. I felt completely faked out by Robert Mueller. I thought that Robert Mueller was going to save America when he began his investigation. The portraits that people painted of him who had worked with him, and the character he had shown by the way that he had because of some Princeton buddy of his, had volunteered to go to Vietnam after he graduated from Yale. A particular kind of a guy that would do that, and he was a guy who was uh, coming up uh, to fight for America against what George W. Bush was doing to the country, taking us what a lot of people saw was far in the direction of fascism with his war on terror and the way he abused that. Yeah, liberalism has had a reluctance to go toe to toe with uh, with the kind of enemy that it has. They insisted on talking about our friends across the aisle, when it had been for a long period of time been obvious that these were enemies, and whatever their personal vibe might be, and they were conducting a political warfare. Their friends across the aisle, the people who obstructed everything Obama tried to do, not for any purpose other than to make him fail, to take the powers of the presidency away from him. No friends across the aisle that would do that. And that was typical of what the Republican Party had become. Why hasn't there? Why didn't Robert Mueller, who had Trump dead to rights on a whole handful of felonies of obstruction of justice, why didn't he deliver the message in a powerful way rather than burying it in a bunch of legalese? And they called it a roadmap to impeachment. It didn't achieve impeachment. It didn't achieve impeachment because it wasn't written to have the political effect of being a roadmap to impeachment. Didn't talk plainly enough. And then on top of that, this corrupt attorney general is allowed to get away with basically distorting what the report showed. Exonerate. Baloney. Why wasn't that war waged with, why didn't Robert Mueller call a press conference to denounce what had been done with his report? Why hadn't he written the report in a way that was more reminiscent of what was done at Watergate, where the special prosecutor makes it quite clear that this is big-time criminal activity at the highest levels of the American government? I don't know the answer to that, but there is a lot more fight now. Trump has so raised the stakes that what happened with Merrick Garland is basically an emblem of what's happened to liberal America generally. I was trying to raise the alarm in liberal America, I would say, full time from about 2004 to 2015 in every way that I could, from blogging to radio to writing a book, what we're up against, calls, writing a series called Press the Battle. There was a lot not being fought that needed to be fought. And part of it was I saw that liberal America hasn't had a mental map that was good at conceiving what they were up against. What I was trying to show is that what we're up against is a coherent force that consistently works to make things worse, and to show the coherence of it, to show that there's an it that's operating as a dynamic in the world that is actually coherent, and that is through time acting to make things more broken. And that actually is a good description of what much Western religious tradition has conceived of as evil. So it is possible to see that there is, and important to see, that there is such a thing as a coherent force that is moving through the human world and can sometimes congeal upon and take over a particular actor, as has happened in our time with the Republican Party. That basically, when you're fighting against something like what the Republican Party was becoming from, say, the first Bush until we get to the second Bush, it becomes from a party that's arguably aligned with the good, more or less, at least with democracy, to a party that is basically destructive. And aligned with evil. And evil is just a force of destruction. And let's note that when after 8 years of George W. Bush, America was in ruins. We botched this war, had a terrible time. Our standing in the world was bad. We were plunging into a financial crisis, the likes of which we hadn't seen. And there's a whole list of things that were sort of in need of great repair. The force of fascism is destructive because fascism is a form of brokenness, and brokenness is what destruction is about. So the liberal world is having to fight now a major battle against the force of fascism. And whatever have been sources of weakness just simply need to be overcome so that we can fight and win this thing and drive this fascist force back into the hinterlands of American power. We are engaged in a great civil war, and we need to be inspired by some kind of a battle hymn of the Republic to fight this thing. And the weakness that did not have the stomach for battle when battle was required, and the blindness that didn't see this ugly thing that has taken over this spirit of domination and cruelty and greed and conflict, this ugly thing that has taken over the right, and to see it for what it is, an expression of a force of brokenness that needs to be defeated. And needs to be defeated not just for the good of America, but for the good of humankind, because we've got challenges to meet, and a fascist America is the last thing, that the world needs. The world needs America at its very best. We need leadership at the level of FDR and Lincoln. We need the best of America to be leading the world, not someone like Trump. That's something that the American people need to feel in their hearts, is the nature of the challenge that we face in the 2024 election. Thank you.